Thanks. Thanks, Kirsten. Thanks for coming. If only there was some kind of handy ironing board here for my beer. Well, that's it, man. Anyway, yeah, you can buy this over there, and you can get the first 6 people who buy the book get a free, genuine single malt whiskey miniature. If you're not that quick and you buy the 7th one, I'll buy you a drink. I can't say that for all of you, because if you all buy the book, that's going to be a fucking expensive round. So, well, we'll see how we go. If you all buy the book, I'll buy you all a drink. I think that's pretty safe. No one's going to have a tenner each, are they? Sorry, I'm blethering. I'll put this down. If only there was a handy ironing board. Yeah, so I'm just going to read a little bit from towards, well, it's about 2/3 of the way through this. It came out in March, and the first 100 pages are quite sort of nice and funny, and I was reading stuff from that bit, and it's kind of hamstrung because there's things happen. It's kind of loads of plot spoilers, but I'm just going to read a bit from the end, and it's full of plot spoilers, but you look like you can handle this kind of shit, I think. It's fairly, you're not the typical kind of, some of the book audiences that you get are demure and perhaps squeamish. Is anyone eating? I should maybe, okay, you better finish up quick, because... So all you need to know about this towards the end, I'm going to try not to give too much away. You need to know that the action is happening at the bottom of a cliff face in a remote part of Islay. It's about dawn, they've been out all night, various horrible things have happened. Adam, the main character, has to remove a bullet from the crushed head of his friend Luke, who's dead, obviously. Luke has been shot and his skull has been hacked to bits by a claw hammer already, so half the job's been done. But they have to, for reasons I won't reveal, get the bullet out of there so they're not linked to various other misdemeanors and horrible things. Sounds like nice family fun, doesn't it? Okay. Nothing could have prepared him for the gut-wrenching, visceral sickness of this. Of course, he'd seen autopsies on television dramas, but those were sterilised, one step removed from reality. They'd searched their pockets for a useful implement, but all they came up with was a pen of Molly's. Adam cursed their stupidity for not bringing tools from the still. He took a deep breath and began tentatively poking into the gaping wound in Luke's head with the pen, his trembling hands making it impossible to control it with any precision. There was a deep fluttering in his stomach, teetering on the brink of vomiting at any minute. At least a quarter of Luke's head was smashed in where Joe had hacked away with it. One side of his face a hash of minced flesh and broken bone, the eye just a sticky mess of creamy mucus. The surrounding hair was matted and thick with blood, the ear completely missing, or in there but unrecognisable, the whole thing a shiny red and black hellhole of flesh. Molly pointed the torch at the wound but looked away. Adam heard a faint squelching sound as he pushed some purple material aside, a chunk of something fleshy falling out. His stomach lurched and he coughed, sticking bile onto the snow to his side. He wiped his mouth on his sleeve and looked back at the wound. Molly's torch beam had moved, so he positioned her hand again. He stuck the pen in, unsure what the hell he was even looking for, why the fuck he was doing this. He lifted a flap of something out the way and saw sickly grey jelly oozing out from underneath. The brain. Everything that made Luke who he was or had been was in that gruesome lump of soft putty. He caught a faint whiff of a smell like something rotting in the back of the fridge, and he gagged, retching again into the snow as he turned from the mess of Luke's head. "Want me to do it?" said Molly. He shook his head and turned back. He forced himself to poke about in the gaping maw, moving loose bits aside, flicking under and into crevices, trying to work out where a bullet might be if it was in there at all. But it had to still be in there, didn't it? That's what puzzled Joe back at the still. There was no exit wound. Adam knew from Luke's scar that the metal plate was somewhere around the back of his head, but did that mean the bullet was in the same area? Or could it have ricocheted back inside the skull? Adam was getting frustrated, digging deeper and deeper into flesh and muscle and skull and brains and finding nothing. He could feel sweat cooling and freezing on his brow. His stomach had got used to what he was doing, but his mind hadn't. He would see this image every night while he slept for the rest of his life. Luke's open head would haunt him into eternity. He couldn't find anything. Maybe the bullet had made it out after all, or maybe it was buried deep in the middle of his brain, or stuck in the skull somewhere, or lodged in the metal plate at the other side. He pushed the pen in almost as far as it would go, then felt a gentle clunk as it tapped the metal plate. He pulled it out and examined it, several inches of slime and blood down its length. He was fucked if he was going to dig that deep into Luke's consciousness. But maybe he would have to. He stared again in the debris, and he could see, gradually sweeping through the layers of fleshy mess, he saw something glimmer amongst the carnage, something metallic. "Hold the torch closer," he said, moving Molly's wrist again. "I found something." Molly glanced at the wound, then looked away. "The bullet?" "I think so." He stuck the pen in. To reach it, he had to rest his hand against the cold, bloody flesh of the wound, holding the pen in both hands to try to keep it steady. A shudder went through his body as he touched Luke's raw flesh. He flicked at the object with the pen, but it didn't budge. He leaned in further and tried again, but it still wouldn't move. He tried a third time, and the thing slipped further into the surrounding grey matter, so that only the very end was visible. Shit. What? It's fucking slippery. He turned to Molly. "I'm going to have to get it with my fingers." Molly closed her eyes, and Adam turned back. He took a deep breath. "Serenity now. Wish me luck." "Good luck." Grimacing, he reached in and began scraping flesh and brain out of the way. It felt like raw mince, but he kept going. He reached for the object lodged in the brain, but it slipped from his shaking hands, burying itself deeper into the mess. He grabbed a handful of brain and ripped it out of the way, wiping his hand on the adjacent eye socket. The object was exposed. He reached back in and dug it out, getting brain under his fingernails, his stomach now spasm after spasm, his eyes watering, his forehead sweating, his whole body shivering with the cold and the stress and the repulsive truth of what he was doing. He lifted it out and held it up. "Thank fuck," he said, showing the bullet to Molly. "Jesus," she said, "well done." He stared at the bloody mess of his hands. "What now?" Molly looked along the coast, Adam's eyes following. It was definitely getting close to dawn, the sky light in the east now. "Throw it in the sea," said Molly, "but not here, along the coast a bit, and make sure it goes further than low tide." "How do I know where low tide is?" Molly shrugged. "Just throw it as far as you can." Adam eased himself up, holding the bullet between his fingers like a gemstone. He began walking away to the east. "And don't forget to wash your hands," Molly said after him. He walked a couple of 100 yards and stopped. He looked at the bullet. Such a tiny thing to kill someone, such a minuscule thing to end a life, to change everything so irrevocably, to put an end to someone's hopes and dreams and everything in their future. He held it tight in his palm, then launched it into the sea, watching as it arced through the pinkish sky and landed with a gentle plop, breaking the surface of the perfectly calm black water. He bent down to the water's edge and began rubbing his hands together in the wash. The water was shockingly cold, his fingers numb, but he could still feel the small specks of grit under his nails, reminders of Luke's life. He laughed bitterly to himself as he scrubbed at his fingers and palms, scratching at the skin with his nails until his hands were raw and sore. He felt pain as he scraped away, and it felt like sweet relief. He walked back. Roddy was out cold. He had Ethan's jacket over him as a blanket. "He okay?" said Adam. Molly nodded. "Just checked. His pulse is a bit shallow, but he's still breathing fine." They both turned to Luke, Molly playing the torch beam over his head. It was an unholy mess. "Think it looks like a gunshot wound?" she said. Adam stared at it. "I have no idea. A shotgun, maybe. What do you think?" Molly shrugged. "I don't think we should take the chance." "What do you mean?" "You've seen the forensic stuff on telly. I know it's probably bullshit, but they might still be able to tell he was shot. So what can we do?" Molly looked out at the implacable spread of water. "I think we should throw him in the sea." "What?" "If they examine the body now, they might find gunshot residue or some shit. I don't know. But if it spends a couple of days in open water getting nibbled by fish and seagulls, maybe they won't be able to detect anything. Deterioration of evidence, something like that." "Do you have any idea what you're talking about?" Molly stared at him. "Not really, but don't you think it's worth trying?" Adam sat down, utterly exhausted. "To be honest, I don't give a fucking shit anymore. What does it matter if we're connected with Joe? Our lives are fucking meaningless now anyway. How are we supposed to go on after this?" He waved his arms around aimlessly. "You don't mean that," said Molly. "I do." Molly sat down next to him. "Do you want to spend the rest of your life in jail for murdering cops?" "But if we just tell the truth." "It's too late for the fucking truth. Forget about the truth." Adam examined his fingers closely. It felt like he still had something under his fingernails, but when he dug into them, he found nothing. He spotted a small dark fleck of something on his finger. He peered at it. It was the skelf he got from the cask at Lafroig, all the way back when Molly gave him a tour. He prodded it, feeling a slight twinge under his skin. "Forget about the truth," he said quietly. "Yes." He hauled himself up with immense tiredness, his entire body aching beyond words, his mind blank. "Come on then," he said. "Let's throw Luke in the sea."